Good morning. Happy Monday. Happy full moon. Boy, this is a doozy, isn't it? A lot of people are kind of like peeling their skin off, I think. For me, hey, it's good. It's all good. It's always all good. I'm happy to be here with you on Power Talk, and I've got a powerful show for you today. We're going to talk about success and happiness. My guest is Roy Huff. Roy is a research scientist, he's an author, he's a teacher, and he's got to be a wonder child because he moved to Hawaii at a very, very young age. He was 17 years old, he had $100 in his pocket, and he went out there to start a brand new life. And since then, he has earned 5 degrees in 4 different disciplines. Holy moly, I was lucky to get through with one. And he's worked on projects such as forecasting volcanic emissions from the Kilauea volcano, and more and more and more. But he's really gotten to be kind of famous in the last few years because he has a #1 international best-selling series. It's a fantasy series on Amazon. And now he has stepped into writing nonfiction. And that's how I met him, through his new book. So welcome, Roy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
Oh, my pleasure to have you. And for you viewers, his website is royhuff.net. You can find out all about him there. That's ROYHUFF.net. And so how did you come up with this Everville series?
Oh, wow. That's a long story. Well, I can skip my childhood. Usually I start with my childhood, but when I went back to school as an adult. So initially I came to Hawaii and part of that was to go to school. I didn't finish for various reasons, which we can talk about later. But I went back to school when I was 30, and over the course of the next 6 years, I got 5 degrees. And while I was working on my 4th degree, I was taking a English class just to fulfill one of my core requirements. And we had to write a creative writing paper. Mm-hmm. So that creative writing paper, the first chapter, became the first chapter of my book. So the 3-page paper was called Everville, and we had to share it with some of the other students in class to get feedback. And one of the students, just in an offhanded comment, said that they'd like to read an entire book about Everville. And I just thought to myself, I could do that. So I was like, all right, I'll write the book. And then as I was writing the book, I kind of decided to make it a series instead of just a standalone book, primarily for marketing purposes. And then eventually I wrote the book, and then I finished 4 books in the series, and I'll probably do at least one more to cap it off. But yeah, that's pretty much how it started.
That's wild. It's amazing how we get started. I wrote my first book because somebody dared me. And, I told her she was crazy because, it's like I'm in sales. I do PowerPoint presentations. I do bullet point lists, and I don't do prose, and, so one day I was bored and I opened up a Word document, and started writing, and that became Soul Adventures, and the rest is history, I guess. So I know how that goes. And I guess we end up being where we're supposed to be when we think smart and not hard, which is, I love your new book. So, and your new book has already become a bestseller in several categories on Amazon, right?
Yeah, I think it's in business mentoring and coaching. It's #1 right now. Yes.
Fantastic. So what caused you to shift from writing fantasy to writing nonfiction self-help?
Well, I have a very broad background. So I've actually written a lot of nonfiction, for my degrees in education. I did a lot of scientific research. So I have published a peer-reviewed article related to the research that I did when I was working on volcanic emissions for the Kilauea volcano that came out a couple of years ago. So I had the skill set for nonfiction already, and my life was kind of a roller coaster, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But as an adult, I went through a tough time. I was working on a grant for NASA, and for NOAA and NASA called GOES-R. And that grant concluded. And after the conclusion of the grant, I had like no money coming in for several months, and that was, financially taxing to myself. And family at the time. Yeah. So for like several months, I didn't have any money coming in. Fortunately, I had multiple degrees. So I put my application back in for the Department of Education here in Hawaii. So I got a job right immediately. But it takes a while for them to start paying you. And so that was financially straining on my family. And then, I just had some other issues, and eventually I went through a divorce and then a bankruptcy, and then there were several other issues. And, at one point I just looked at my life and I said, okay, I need to make some changes. I need to make some changes, because this divorce, if I'm being honest, a lot of it's my fault, and I need to change who I am. I need to, realize what are some of the mistakes that I've made. And so I put together an action plan for myself. And then I ignored the action plan for a few months, as most people do. And then I was trying to write my fourth book in the Everville series. And I, as a teacher at the time, tended to marathon write during my vacations. So I had a Christmas break coming up, and at the end of the Christmas break, I wrote nothing. And it wasn't an issue of writer's block. It was just an issue of me just not writing anything. So I said, okay, let me take a look at this action plan. And so one of the things that that was on the top of my list was to improve my overall health. I had gradually crept up in weight. I was always the skinny person in my family. All my family was overweight except for me. So at the time, I think my weight was at 198.8. I'm 5'10". So I was in the overweight range. I wasn't obese, but I was, clearly overweight. And my energy level was a lot lower than it should be, which made it more difficult for me to think clearly and make good choices. So I said, okay, well, one of the things that I want to do is lose 15 pounds. So I said, if I lose 15 pounds, I'll be happy. So I looked at a couple of things. I said, okay, well, what can I do to lose 15 pounds? I don't believe in diets. I never have. I wanted to make some permanent changes. And the reason that I thought about that was just because, when you have a time frame that something finishes, usually you go back to the old behavior. And so, I've research that I've done and, what I've known, people tend to put the weight back on, if they go on a diet. So I said, I need to look at, some small changes or changes that I can make in my life that I can live with, that can be permanent. And the two things that I decided to target was fast food. So, I just won't go to fast food. If I want a hamburger, I'll cook it myself. And that was just the one kind of big thing. And that way I wouldn't deprive myself of anything that I really wanted, but if I really wanted it, I had to make it myself. And, so I figured, okay, well, that will just make it a lot easier for me to eat healthier without, restricting my diet in any way. And the other thing I decided to do, which I know most people may not be able to do, is decided to quit drinking. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the drinking, and I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic, but I was starting to drink a little bit more. And a lot of that was because of the divorce and some of the issues that I had. But I said, okay, well, I can kind of kill a few birds with one stone here. If I quit drinking, I can, start to achieve my goal of becoming healthier. I could save some money. I could be more productive. So I could do a lot of things. So I said, well, let me do this. Let me do these two things. I'll quit drinking alcohol and I'll quit eating fast food. And in the first 4 weeks, I lost 12 pounds. Mm-hmm. And I said, this is going great. And only one day I cheated. I think it was January 27th. It was like 2.5 years ago. And I said, all right, well, let me look at what I can do to kind of mitigate this if it happens in the future. So I called a couple of hotlines, did a little bit of research. And so I put some strategies into place in case I got a craving for some alcohol. And then one of the things that I looked up was, exercise releases endorphins, just like alcohol does. So I said, all right, well, if I get a craving, I'll just kind of flex my muscles. Wherever I am, I'll just flex my muscles and get a little bit of that endorphin release. And And then I'll do a very short workout in the morning, just a very short exercise in the morning, just a few minutes, a few push-ups and setups, nothing major, not going to the gym or anything. And so I kept up that routine, and I haven't had a drink since. I haven't eaten at fast foods. I'll eat at a restaurant occasionally, but I don't eat at fast food. So over the course of 44 weeks, I lost 44 pounds.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I blew past my goal, and I, did way better than I thought I would. And I've kept the weight off. So I think this morning I stepped on the scale. I'm like 164.4. And so I think I got down to about 158. And then since then I've increased my workout. So I've put on a little bit of additional muscle since then. So I'm at 164, and I'm really happy with that. My energy level is a lot higher.
I bet.
So I had some really strong success with that. And another part of the action plan that I had put together was to, add some, positive information. And I did that in the form of audiobooks and podcasts and different types of things. So I wanted to increase both my, things about like personal development, but also my professional career. So things about education, and then about writing, writing skills and those types of things. And I gained a lot of knowledge and a lot of information. And then I looked at things that worked for me and didn't work for me. And I decided after a year or so that I wanted to write down some of those successes, not just my recent successes, with the weight loss and finishing the book that I did. Because I remember I said that I was trying to work out on that fourth book, and I finished the fourth book. And so during the summer of last year, over 24 days, I wrote the book. So I wrote the rough draft in about 24 days. And since then I had, I've gone through, talked to my agent, looked at different publishers. And then eventually I had one offer, but I decided to do it alone. But that book was basically me putting down all of the things that I did. And then I reached back, until my childhood basically, and looked at some of the successes that I had early on, So when I was growing up, I had a really difficult time, and I was using some of the principles that are in my book without realizing it. I just kind of happened upon some of those principles. And, when I was writing the book, I decided to list all of the principles that had helped me succeed in different aspects of my life. And then looking at some of the things that caused certain failures, and just put them in kind of an organized way that I thought could be a blueprint, for people that are kind of lost or not knowing where to go, or maybe they know where to go, but they don't know how to get there. So I put these principles together. I used, different experiences from my life, and what worked for me, what didn't work for me. And then I reached out to several leaders in the field. I contacted Brian Tracy and got some quotes from him. A.G. Riddle, some authors, looking at, professional and writing strategies. So I, talked to all these different people, and then I completed the book, and, tried to share it with everyone. And so far it's been well received. And, so that takes us to this point.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's kind of like, because how I met you was because you contacted me to write a review for your book. And so I read it, and I realized that there wasn't any brand new information in there, but it was all stuff I needed to hear again. It needed to be bubbled up to the surface for me to help me have more happiness and more success in my life. And I think that's what all of us need, Roy, is just sometimes that gentle reminder, that little nudge that maybe wakes us up to, okay, so maybe no more fast food, so maybe no more alcohol, or whatever it is that is holding us back from moving forward on the path where we are intended to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of, how they say, common sense isn't so common, right? So one of the things that I really wanted to do is I didn't just want to tell people what to do. I wanted to, give them strategies that they could use to actually implement some of those things, right? So it's a lot easier. You know, sometimes you have a good suggestion and it's like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to make $1 million. Okay, great. How do I do that? Right.
Exactly.
So, you know, I wanted to look at, you know, each of the principles and, you know, that I had and give them at least a couple of strategies for doing those things. And so I worked really hard to be as clear and specific as I could and give at least a couple of strategies for each of the principles, give people some potential pitfalls or roadblocks that they might have and how to implement them. So, I think one of the things that sets apart Think Smart, Not Hard is, one is that it uses my life, you know, so I try not to be too preachy in the book, and I try to just do a little bit of storytelling and show people how the principles can be implemented and how you can overcome obstacles, and then kind of clarify specific ways that they could do that and strategies that they could use to implement them.
And you
And
dive right in, you know, with a biggie, because you start off with forgiveness. And
yeah,
that's right in one of your first top 5 principles that you put out there. Why do you think forgiveness is so important in success and happiness?
well, I think, you know, this goes to someone's mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't really achieve happiness or success unless you have the right mindset. You know, I don't think you can achieve success without happiness. I think happiness comes first. And I don't think that you can achieve happiness unless you are able to let go of the things in your life that have held you back and bothered you. And that includes a lot of different things. And one of those is forgiving those that don't deserve forgiveness, because there's a lot of people that really don't deserve forgiveness. I mean,
Sure.
let's face it. But, you know, it's not about them. It's about you. And
Exactly.
if you are not willing to forgive them, what you're doing is you're allowing those people to control you and to control how you think. You know, if you're and I've struggled with this. I think we've all struggled with this, and no one is ever perfect. You know, I've been in the car and somebody cuts me off, or I cut somebody off and they honk at me. Let's be fair, because that
Yeah.
happens, right? And I'm like, you know, I get angry, and then I start to realize, well, this person probably doesn't even care.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting here getting angry and changing the way that I think and ruining my day for what? You know, for no particular reason. And a lot of times, you know, somebody cuts you off and they're not even aware that, you know, they're just trying to change lanes, and because they have to go where they have to go, and they're not even thinking about you. And here you are, you know, putting up all this mental, emotional energy over something. So, I mean, it could be something as small as that, you know, and it could be something huge. I mean, as a child, I went through a lot of abuse. I mean,
Mhm.
severe physical abuse. I lived in abject poverty. You know, when I was really small, 4 to 6 years old or so, I lived in a trailer park in Kentucky, and this trailer park was,
Oh,
I mean, it was bad. I mean,
yeah.
we had a huge hole in the bathroom on the bottom floor. So, like, you know, during the wintertime, it'd get really cold and we'd have to bundle up in blankets because, you know, it was terrible. It caught on fire one time. There was an electrical fire, and we moved back in, like, I think it was the same day or the next day. And it was really bad. We were really poor. And, you know, so I had this poverty mindset growing up, and I, you know, for a while, I just really resented my family, my mother especially, because I blamed her for the situation that we were in. And you know, the saying goes is that you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond,
Exactly.
right? And so I can't control, you know, the mindset that my mother had, the skills that my mother had, the, you know, ability to, you know, rise above the situation or anything. And you know, I was letting this resentment, you know, for my, you know, towards my mother, keep me from moving forward. You know, and even though I was always an optimistic person, which I think is very critical, and I think
Mhm.
that really has pulled me forward, you know, regardless of what I've done, is this sense of optimism. But I was still being held back by this issue that I had with my mother, and you know, I just eventually decided, you know, I have to let this thing go because it's bothering me, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, I still, you know, I'm not perfect, and I have to look at my situation and my heart from time to time and figure out, okay, well, where is it that I'm, what am I holding on to? I have to be honest with myself. I have to reflect on my heart and look at things. But you can't let these things keep you and provide an excuse for you not to be the best person that you can be. And it doesn't mean that I wrote the book, and some people are like, I don't want to make $10 million. Well, you don't have to make $10 million. It's about finding out what you want to do, and then what's holding you back, and what are the strategies that you can use to get you there. And the first one is taking responsibility for your life.
Big one.
So yeah, and part of taking responsibility is first forgiving others and then forgiving yourself. A lot of people, they're fine with forgiving others, but then they just don't give themselves a pass. Right. They're like, oh, I'm so stupid, or I'm so fat, or I'm so ugly, or I'm so dumb. And, they don't realize that, they're shutting their brain down. They're shutting their subconscious mind down when they do this, right? They're telling themselves they can't do it. So their mind doesn't bother to look for ways to find out, steps to their goal, so they have to get over that. So they have to start by forgiving other people, and then they have to forgive themselves. And this is something that you have to continually do. It's not like you do it one time.
It's a process.
Yeah, because you're gonna, you can look at your life and reflect on your life. And then if you have one great month, that's great. But then if you don't continually do this, you're going to find yourself back in those situations. So it's something that you have to continually do and reflect upon so that you don't unnecessarily, hamstring yourself and prevent you from moving forward.
I think that responsibility and accountability are really the cornerstones of all of it, because we are the creators of our reality. Let's face it, whatever you're thinking, Norman Vincent Peale said it way back in the day, as a man thinketh. And that's so true. It holds true today. And, we have to own up to that.
Yes, absolutely. So, so the whole first part of the book it's really about responsibility and then mindset. There's this great book by Carol Dweck called Mindset, and it looks at people, one with a fixed mindset and then one with a growth mindset. And, you look at the people that have a growth mindset, and that just means that they think their actions control their future, right? What they do is the primary cause of their life. And you can either think that everything else is the cause of your life, or you can think that the choices you make are the cause of your life. And, growing up, I thought I had a growth mindset. I didn't know the terminology back then, but I thought, because I was optimistic. But you can still be optimistic and have a fixed mindset. I prided myself in my intelligence growing up. And, that can tend to lead into hubris and apathy and laziness, because if you think that you're the smartest person in the room, then you think that you don't necessarily have to try as hard as everybody. Yeah. And if you look at that old saying, it's 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration, right? So it's not so much your talent that you have. Talent, it can be the inspiration to get you going. But, once you get there, once you have that baseline of understanding, everybody pretty much is on the same level. And then it's just a matter of how much effort and how much deliberate practice you put into doing something. So, looking at the failings that I had in my life, a lot of times they were because I didn't put the effort in that I needed to. And I did, because I either didn't think that I wanted to, or I didn't have, the passion or desire or a strong enough why, but that's really what held me back. Just not putting in the effort that I needed to on specific, goals and things that I wanted to do. And, when I got motivated to do something, I did put in the effort, so when I went back to school, I decided to do what everybody told me that I couldn't do,
And wham, look how many degrees you have.
Yeah. At the time I was, I was married, I had kids, and I was 30 years old. I was working a full-time job, a couple of part-time jobs. And I just said, well, what I'm doing right now isn't working. I was working on, I had a side business that, that was failing at the time that led into my second bankruptcy. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to go back to school. I want to do the science thing, which I loved. And so I decided that I was going to be a science teacher. And I put a plan in place on how I could follow through with that. And, over the next 6 years, I got 5 degrees, and I did that working concurrently on multiple degrees while I was working full-time and 2 part-time jobs. And it was a crap load of work.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of work. And, you have to put in the work sometimes.
And you know what? I would wager that, just because you did all of that work at that point, you can't just slide for the rest of your life either. But
No.
you can do it, like you said in your book, you can do it smart, and it doesn't have to be hard, right?
Yeah, that's right. And, I talk about this a little bit too, is that, I had the opportunity to work on a couple of grants as a research scientist at the university. And I didn't put in the work that I needed, I had like, okay, I got these degrees, yay, and then, but this goes back to the mindset thing, I had imposter syndrome. I didn't think that I necessarily deserved the position that I had. And I thought that maybe it was just luck, and that, people, didn't see me as smart as they were. And, working on a grant for NASA, and then, flying out to different places and meeting all of these doctors and experts in the field, it's very easy to get intimidated and start to question yourself, and there's always going to be people that are smarter than you, that have more education than you, that are prettier than you, that have more money than you. And you can't compare yourself to these other people. You got to compare yourself to yourself 6 months ago. That's the best way to do it, right? Exactly. So, I just kind of, I had this imposter syndrome, and it kind of paralyzed me. And, I didn't really put in the effort that I needed to. And it also coincided with a time in NASA's funding. There was something called a sequester, and they were looking at cutting back and scaling back.
Mm-hmm.
And so my grant got scaled back, and, I used that as an excuse really for, why my grant got scaled back. But if I was being honest, I think, I had a lot of successes, with that grant. I had done some tremendous things, but I wasn't at the level that I needed to be. I had to be really independent. And, I had a lot of responsibility, and that was all on me. I didn't have to clock in. I didn't have to do anything. I could work from home and program stuff and do whatever I needed to do. I had a lot of flexibility. It was fantastic. But, I had to monitor myself, and I needed to continue to grow and learn. And I had to learn a lot. When I got thrown into the position, I didn't really know that much programming at all. And I had to start writing like 6 different programming languages within a matter of, 5 to 6 months. So, I had a huge learning curve that I had to do. And I wasted a lot of time.
So what are you going to do with all this, Roy? What's next for you? You got best-selling books all over the place and a lot of degrees.
Well, I'm going to continue writing, I'm going to continue teaching. And I think for me, it's just a matter of deciding what to teach and what to write. So I love science. I love learning. And I am, in terms of, what I'm an expert at, I guess you could say that I'm an expert at learning and education and teaching. And, I have a strong background in science. And, I have a rough draft of a time travel book that I wrote.
Cool.
So that's probably right next on my list of things to finish. And then I have...
Chaco. I think the maid's here.
Yeah.
Well, and we're just about out of time.
Yeah.
So of your 52 principles, what do you think is the most important one?
Oh, that's tough. But, I kind of put them in order for a reason. Uh-huh. So I would start with number 1, forgiveness. Forgive others that don't deserve it, including yourself. And if that's the only thing you do, you've made a lot of progress. But, I would recommend trying to do all of them, or as many of them as you can. You may disagree with 1 or 2 of them, but I think if you implement some or most of them, it'll make a big difference on your life.
Absolutely. So listeners and viewers, Roy's website is royhuff.net. Check him out. Check out his new book, which is Think Smart, Not Hard. And also check out his fantasy series. I think you might really find some stuff in there that you would find intriguing. And next week, my guest is going to be Ann Tucker. We're going to talk about removing doubt from your life so that you can be undoubtedly awesome, which is what you truly are anyway. So until next week, remember, people who take responsibility for their lives create the reality they desire. Ciao.